There's an old book from 1932 called 1984, which is long past. And it was a prophetic warning about a possible future where the news media controlled the behavior of the world. There was constant warfare between China, Russia, and the rest of the world. And in that book, the main antagonist is explaining to the protagonist that the constant war is not actually against an enemy, but the war is the government against its own people. To constantly destroy the products of hard work and creativity so that people don't have the leisure time to think about their situation. Connected to that is the recurring information that those who do this are required to tell us that they're going to do something to us, which is odd in a practical sense, but not in a philosophical or religious or ethical or moral sense. If they have this in their must-dos, it's part of a system of some kind. Thirdly, there's a gentleman called Jordan Maxwell who's done 50, 60 years of research into symbols and the power behind the throne. And he said that no matter what it looks like, the wars on Earth are religious wars between two groups, or magical wars between groups of black and white magicians disguised as religion. And he says that one enters history and one group is in power, having defeated the other group. And the other group wants to get back to power and riches, and they don't have any money because they lost and everything was taken from them. So what they do is they start going rah, rah, rah about freedom and morality and justice and the chicken in every pot. They create a middle class. The middle class gets money out of the conquerors to have an economy. And then the defeated group destroys the middle class and takes all their money and property, and then they have power and they attack the first group again. And where we are now in that game is they're destroying the middle class and taking all their money and power and property. And we can see the visible players, but we don't see the invisible players. Now, compounded on top of this is the unknownness of the effects of what is called the Great Year, which is 25,800 years long. And it's an expanded version of night and day and the four seasons. It's referred to as above, so below. The great year has effects on the biology of the Earth, which we're inclusive in. And it's as easy to see when you see the esoteric science. We're subjected here to gravity, night and day, seasons, food for energy, birth, death. The larger cycle, the great year, has to do with humanity as a whole organism, and it's divided into four quadrants like the four seasons. We have spring, summer, winter, fall, winter. The great year also has four sections, and they are over 6,000 years per section, and they have effects on us like day is better than night for warmth, spring and summer are better for food than fall and winter. And something you may understand is the TV show Game of Thrones. They keep saying winter is coming, because in that scenario they're talking about the great year, and the winter section of that, the downside, the evil side, the cooler side, is 6,800 years long. And where they have been during that show is near the end of fall. And those people they call the Maesters were aware of the great year, as were the Mayans, for example. And some of the secret mystery schools. And for us, we're coming out of either the probably the winter or the late spring. One of these quadrants. We're about to enter the age of Aquarius, which is one of these long times, and it's supposed to be a golden era which will last for 6,000 years, and the black magicians want to prevent that, and that's what all this mess is about. Plus, there's a planetary alignment that happens every 10,000 years, which is going to happen October 23rd, 2023, which is next year, which causes what looks like the end of the world, tsunamis, volcanism, earthquakes. Volcanoes darken the skies, there's no crops are down, disease is up, civilizations are generally destroyed. And the only persons who can survive that is the hunter-gatherers. And we start again. There are two groups that try to weather this out. These are the mystery schools, which are constantly trying to put this information out into the world, and the black magicians who wish to weather the storm and come out on top of the world. We're pushing back information best we can, and records show that modern man has had higher civilizations for 39,000 years. And what prevents the accumulation of civilization is these catastrophes which happen every 400 years, every 2,000 years, and the big one every 10,000 years. And if we go back to those 2,000 years ago, the geologists have confirmed the biblical flood. And there's a man named Randall Carlson whose whole life has been dedicated to what he calls, coined the phrase catastrophism, which is these periods of giant floods which end civilization. And no one's been able to refute his information. So the current worldwide debacle is designed to line up with the astrological events. And I guess the main question to prove this would be, why are the elites building underground shelters, especially in New Zealand? What do they know that we, the public, don't know? And I would say it's the coming astrophysical disaster next year, which will look like end times. And we don't know, but one would say that they, the black magicians, have decided not to tell the public because we'll panic. And they won't be able to make money and gather resources right up to the last minute. And we may arrive on their doorsteps of their underground facilities looking for food, water, and shelter. These informations also clear up why they are finding, mostly in the Middle East, because it's dry, to preserve these underground cities with 10 to 20,000 people housed underground, and they don't know why they did that, and they don't know how they did that. But I would surmise that they knew about the coming catastrophe, so they dug in as the elites are doing now. The ruins in South America that are on top of some mountains have been knocked over by floodwaters full of mud. And the calculations for this kind of disaster are that the tsunamis will be thousands of feet high, able to knock over 20-ton stone blocks on top of a mountain. And I just saw yesterday some 45-ton statues were discovered in the Middle East, and they're buried in, there's a mudslide. They've been knocked over and dragged along by mud. So even in the desert, there were huge floods and mudslides able to flatten the civilization. And one of the events like this was the North American ice sheet, which came down from the pole halfway down the United States of America's region. if you look at cowboy movies and they have those mesas sticking up, those are volcanic shafts. And the ice went through there and dug out everything else but that. And if there was a civilization there, it's long gone. And it looks like there was a catastrophic meteor strike on the ice sheet and it melted and all that water came down basically in a few weeks. Took out all the soil, everything that was there, created the Grand Canyon and all kinds of other gigantic river courses, which are so big, no one noticed that they were river courses and not valleys. So this is what happened to the ancients. And where the technology came from that looks like they had laser-controlled CNC devices to cut stone. So we're involved here in a program of eternal slavery to the black magicians. Burning of the Library of Alexandria. There was a library in India which had millions of documents, which was burned by a crazy warlord conquering. So prepare for this. This is going to be worse than anyone has predicted. It's not going to be poverty. It's going to be the four horsemen. And I'm not going to say of the apocalypse, because the definition of apocalypse is the revelation of knowledge, which is what this video is, and what Randall Carlson is, and what Jordan Maxwell is, and many other people who are revealing what's really going on. But the end of every civilization to date has been famine. Famine creates anxiety, famine creates war, war creates smoke, smoke creates a darkening of the skies promotes poor crops, which means less food for people, less food for animals. The animals die, there's nothing to eat, people get into desperation, cannibalism, and the whole thing falls down into a few survivors, which will be the hunter-gatherers, because they're used to surviving by hunting and gathering, and the civilized people are not.